Hello Army when the cameras were still rolling. No one expected him to lose composure like that. Just minutes after checking his phone, Jungkook went unusually quiet. His smile faded. His eyes looked distant. Fans thought he was just tired until they noticed something else. He kept rereading one message over and over again. And here's where it gets even more shocking. Sources claim the message came from V. A private text sent right before Jungkook's sudden emotional shift. No public interaction. Yet, whatever was written in that message seemed powerful enough to completely change his mood. In seconds as oh, what did Tim actually say? And why did it hit Jungkook that hard? Tonight, we're breaking down every clue, every reaction, and every detail fans might have missed. The moment didn't explode and it cracked. After that glance at his phone, Jungkook tried to recover. He forced a small laugh, nodded at something the host said, but the timing felt wrong, too delayed, too mechanical. His fingers tightened around the mic as if he needed something solid to hold on to. Fans replayed the clip in slow motion. His jaw flexed, his throat moved, like he swallowed something heavy. And then, that blink, not a normal blink, the kind you do when you're holding back tears you refuse to let fall in public. Within minutes, speculation ignited. Screenshots circulated. Zoommed-in frames. Comparisons to older broadcasts where he looked emotional. But this felt different. This wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't stage overwhelmed. It was personal. The rumor escalated when someone claimed that just seconds before the visible shift, Jungkook had unlocked his phone and opened a messaging app. Not social media, not a group chat notification, a single thread in the name. At the top, allegedly VO confirmation. No proof, just whispers from insiders who said the two hadn't been publicly seen interacting much lately. Schedules rarely overlapping. Separate appearances, separate interviews. Subtle distance that only the most observant fans began to notice months ago. Then came the more unsettling theory: what if the message wasn't comforting? What if it was final? Some fans pointed out that Jungkook had mentioned recently feeling overwhelmed by expectations. Others recalled T speaking cryptically in a past live broadcast about needing space to breathe. Two separate statements at different times, harmless on their own, but together they formed a narrative point. One account claimed the private message contained words that hinted at change, at distance, at something shifting behind closed doors. No one knows the exact content, but the rumor suggests it was an anger. It wasn't a fight. It was honesty, the kind that hurts more than shouting. And then there's the detail that refuses to disappear. The way Jungkook kept rereading it. If it was simple reassurance, why revisit it over and over? Why did his expression grow heavier each time? Observers noticed something else. After the event ended, Jungkook reportedly stayed behind longer than usual. No feel it. No lingering smiles. For cameras, just a quiet departure. Hours later, Tim posted nothing. That silence felt louder than any statement, because when things are normal, there are interactions. Casual, small overlaps. But this time, nothing, no acknowledgement, no subtle signal to calm the storm, and the absence became the loudest clue. Some fans believe the message may have referenced future plans, solo commitments intensifying, paths diverging, priorities shifting. Others think it could have been deeply personal, something only the two of them understand, a memory, a promise, or a realization that something they once relied on is no longer the same. There's also a darker speculation circulating quietly in forums that the emotional reaction wasn't about conflict, but about letting go. Not dramatic, not explosive, just inevitable. And that's what makes it brutal. Because sometimes the most painful messages aren't accusations, they're admissions. What makes this rumor impossible to ignore is how controlled Jungkook usually is in public. He protects his emotions. He guards his reactions. Yet in that moment, something slipped through. Something real. Was it regret? Was it disappointment? Or Was it the weight of a conversation that happened long before that phone lit up? And this was just the echo of it. No official clarification has been given. No confirmation. Just that clip, that unreadable message, that expression that didn't look staged. And until someone speaks, the question lingers heavier each day. What did Taehyung say that Jungkook wasn't ready to hear? The next morning, the clip had already fractured into 1,000 interpretations, but one detail kept resurfacing. The timestamp at exactly 11:47 p.m., just minutes before the public appearance where Jungkook appeared visibly shaken. An alleged private message was delivered. Fans who obsessively track digital patterns noticed he had been active moments before stepping on stage. Active and then suddenly still. Rumors don't grow without oxygen, and this one was breathing fire. What intensified everything was the contrast. Earlier that same day, Jungkook had seemed fine, playful, composed, relaxed. Nothing hinted at emotional instability. Nothing suggested internal conflict. But emotions don't always build gradually. Sometimes they detonate from a single sentence. Speculation deepened when older clips resurfaced. Subtle exchanges between him and V from months ago. A glance that lingered too long. A joke that felt layered. Pause before answering a simple question about staying connected. At the time, no one questioned it. Now, every frame felt like evidence. Point one theory dominating online discussion suggests that the message wasn't sudden. It was the continuation of something unresolved. A conversation that had been circling for weeks, maybe even months. Something about timing, about change, about direction. Fans began connecting dots between their increasingly separate public schedules. Fewer shared mentions, fewer overlapping appearances, not hostility, not tension, just distance, and distance can be louder than conflict. Then came a detail that sent the rumor into overdrive. Jungkook reportedly locked his phone slowly after reading the message, but instead of putting it away, he kept it in his hand, almost like he was expecting another notification or hoping for one. None came. What kind of message leaves someone waiting like that? Some believe it may have contained a decision, something finalized, a boundary drawn, a future clarified. Others think it could have been deeply emotional, something vulnerable and raw that hit harder, because it was honest, not cruel, not dramatic, just irreversible. The body language analysis added more fuel. Experts and fan communities dissected his micro-expressions frame by frame. The tightening of his lips, the slight tremor when he exhaled, the way his gaze dropped when the host casually mentioned friendship, coincidence, or trigger. Meanwhile, Taehyung's silence remained untouched. No cryptic posts, no shooting gestures, no subtle interactions to quiet the storm. In a digital world where even small signals speak volumes, the absence of one felt intentional. And that's what unsettled people the most. Because if nothing was wrong, why did everything feel different? Whispers began suggesting that the message might have acknowledged something changing between them, not necessarily negatively, but permanently. Growth can separate people as much as conflict does. Success can pull in opposite directions, and sometimes maturity forces conversations that were postponed for too long. There's also a quieter rumor circulating that the message contained gratitude. Gratitude can sound beautiful, but it can also sound like goodbye. Jungkook's reaction didn't look like anger. It didn't look like betrayal. It looked like processing, like someone absorbing words they knew were coming but still weren't ready to face. And here's where the tension sharpens. An insider account, unverified but spreading fast, claimed that earlier that week the two had a private meeting that lasted longer than expected. No raised voices, no visible conflict afterward, just heavy silence. If that meeting planted the seed, was the message the final confirmation? Fans are divided. Some insist it was likely supportive, maybe even protective words meant to strengthen him during a difficult period. Others argue that The emotional shift felt too abrupt for comfort, too heavy for reassurance. What if it was both? What if it was supportive but also final? The human heart doesn't always react logically. Sometimes relief hurts. Sometimes clarity stings more than confusion. And that clip, that fragile moment on camera, refuses to fade. Keeps replaying because in that blink, in that breath, something real slipped through. Not staged, not exaggerated, just human. The biggest question isn't what was said, it's what changed after it was said. Because since that night, observers have noticed something subtle but undeniable. A recalibration. The energy feels different. The rhythm shifted, not cold, not hostile, just recalibrated. And if this rumor is even partially true, then the message wasn't just emotional. It was transformative, but transformative into what? A stronger bond rebuilt quietly behind the scenes. Or two paths slowly redefining themselves without public explanation until either of them chooses to speak. If they ever do, all that remains is that 11:47 p.m. notification, that unread message glow, and the expression that followed. And somewhere in that silence lies the truth to truth. No one has heard yet, but everyone is waiting for. By the third day, the narrative stopped being just a rumor, it became a pattern. Fans noticed something subtle but impossible to ignore. During a casual live session, Jungkook was asked about who he relies on the most lately. It was a harmless question, a safe one. He smiled, but he didn't answer directly. Instead, he shifted the topic, talked about growth, about learning to stand alone, about understanding that not everything lasts the same way forever. The wording was careful too. Careful. Clips spread instantly. Why phrase it like that? Why now? Because the night of the message still lingered, like unfinished business. And then something even more unsettling happened. An old photo resurfaced. Not recent, not new, but fans realized it had quietly disappeared from a previously visible archive. No announcement, no explanation, just gone. The timing aligned uncomfortably close to that 11:47 p.m. message. Coincidence? Started feeling naive. Meanwhile, V remained composed in public appearances, calm, measured, even radiant. But those who study micro-expressions pointed out something else. A restraint in his laughter. A pause before answering emotionally charged questions. A slight tightening when someone mentioned long-term bonds. Not pain, not regret. Control. And control only shows when something needs to be contained. Another insider whisper surfaced. This one more explosive. Allegedly, the message wasn't long. It wasn't paragraphs of emotion. It was short, direct, clear, the kind of message that closes a chapter without drama. That detail changed everything, because long messages invite discussion. Short ones feel decided. Some fans theorized that it could have been about future independence, about preparing for different directions, separate focuses, different timelines. Not a breakup of friendship, not a falling out, just a redefining, and redefining hurts when you weren't ready. What if Jungkook wasn't reacting to loss but to realization? Realization that things had already shifted quietly, and the message simply made it official. Observers rewatched the clip again right after reading the message. Jungkook inhaled sharply before stepping forward, like someone bracing themselves. Not collapsing, not breaking, bracing. That's not the reaction of someone shocked. That's the reaction of someone who understands, which makes it heavier, because understanding means it wasn't unexpected. Means the conversation had been circling them for a while. Another piece of speculation added tension to the fire. In recent months, both had spoken separately about new eras and becoming individuals beyond expectations. At the time, those words felt empowering. Now they felt connected. What if the message wasn't emotional in a romanticized way? What if it was mature? What if Taehyung simply said something like, "It's time." Time for what? That's the question no one can answer. Time to focus separately. Time to stop relying on old dynamics. Time to evolve without leaning on what once felt permanent. The brutality of the rumor lies in its subtlety. No screaming, no betrayal, no scandal. Just two people possibly acknowledging that growth doesn't always move in parallel. And yet here's the twist that keeps the tension alive. Days after the incident, a staff member was seen adjusting Jungkook's in-ear monitor during rehearsal. As he turned his head slightly, cameras caught something almost imperceptible, a faint smile. Not wide, not joy-filled, soft, private, as if remembering something. If the message was painful, why that smile? Unless the message wasn't entirely sad. Unless it carried reassurance hidden inside. Finality. Unless it said, no matter what changes, I'm still here. That possibility fractures the entire rumor. Because maybe this isn't about distance. Maybe it's about transition. And transitions are terrifying when you don't know the outcome. The public wants a dramatic explanation, a clear conflict, a headline that screams betrayal or heartbreak. But what if the truth is quieter? What if the message didn't end something? What if it began something neither of them has revealed yet? Until one of them speaks directly, not in layered metaphors, not in poetic interviews. The night of 11:47 p.m. remains suspended in mystery. One short message, one visible reaction, one silence. That followed, and somewhere between what was read and what was felt is a truth no one has uncovered. Not yet. A week passed and no clarification and denial and subtle reassurance. Silence hardened into something heavier. Then came the moment no one expected. During a closed rehearsal captured briefly by distant fans, Jungkook was seen alone, longer than usual after everyone else had exited. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't speaking to staff. He was just standing there thinking. The footage was blurry, but one detail stood out. He looked down at his hand as if replaying something. In his mind, the same hand that held his phone. The night of 11:47 p.m. patterns don't lie. And this was becoming one. Meanwhile, V made a public appearance at an unrelated event. Confident, elegant, untouched by controversy. But when a reporter casually asked about staying connected with important people, there was a flickered pause. Half a second too long. He answered diplomatically, spoke about cherishing bonds, about respecting growth, about understanding that sometimes the strongest connections evolve. Quietly. Evolve. That word echoed everywhere. Fans dissected it instantly. Evolve into what? Because evolution doesn't mean destruction, but it doesn't mean preservation either. It means change. And change is unpredictable. Another rumor surfaced from someone claiming proximity to staff circles. Again unverified but spreading fast. Allegedly, the private message contained 3 lines. Just 3. The first line acknowledged the past. The second line acknowledged the present. The third line addressed the future. Oh, anger, no blame. But the final line reportedly included something that implied independence, not separation, not conflict. Independence, if true, that shifts everything because independence forces distance, even if emotional ties remain intact. And that could explain Jungkook's reaction. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't shock. It was the realization that something foundational had shifted from way to I. And that shift can feel like losing balance. But here's where the tension deepens. Point.